and I ended up making out with this guy on the plane.
This was recorded at the Media Joint.
That is so rogue.
Boy, that's a bit rogue.
Is it even that rogue?
Welcome back to another episode of A Bit Rogue. Today with me I have Keeshia, the executive producer of Life Uncut, but more importantly, the host of a new mini-series, Cloud. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I want to quickly go into a bit about you and pick your brain. We kind of just did that, but I'm going to do it again. Sorry. About how you became a producer. So you said you were in radio before and now you're on the other side as a producer.
Yeah. It's a bit of a weird story because my actual uni education's in medical sciences, which is a very long story and I won't bore you to tears with it. But there was a year that I was doing my honours and this was in Newcastle, and I was Monday to Friday in the lab, but I needed a job on the weekend and I was finding that I had no time, right? I never had free time. And two of my friends who had both done comms degrees, I think they were still doing them at the time, they both worked in radio.
Is this CFM?
Similar. So it's called HIT and Triple M now in Newcastle, but at the time it was called NXFM and KOFM.
Okay.
But they're the sister brand of C.
Got it.
Yeah. So they both worked at the radio and I was like, well, maybe if I can get a job with you guys, at least it's kind of two birds, one stone. We'll get to hang out while we work, because I didn't have very much free time. And the funny thing is that one of them went on to be a lawyer now and the other was a school teacher. I ended up staying in radio.
I can't believe
Yeah.
you have a medical degree.
It's not medical sciences. Yeah,
Medical
so it's
science.
kind
But
of
still, that's a lot.
Yeah, biomed. My honours was in genetic factors of addiction. So it was
That's
quite
6 years.
It's quite a weird pivot. It was only 4.
Oh, but still too much for me. Too long for me.
So yeah, it's a bit of a strange pivot, but the radio kind of journey ended up snowballing and I moved around a lot for different jobs, different opportunities. And at the time, that's kind of the only way that you could get in front of a mic, was just saying I'll go anywhere. So they sent me out to do some fill-ins in Griffith, Orange and Dubbo.
Oh my gosh.
For quite a while. And then I ended up getting...
Griffith, Queensland?
No, Griffith. It's halfway between Sydney and Melbourne.
Oh.
Have you seen Underbelly before?
Yeah.
Underbelly 2 was about something that happened in Griffith.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Cold.
There's Italian mafia there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm down for that.
It's an interesting
Just as
town.
a nosy person. Not I don't want to join or anything, but I'd like to have a little look-see.
Go have some Italian food down there. And eventually got to Bendigo, and that was where I had a breakfast show of my own for a couple years, with a co-host. Yeah, it was cool. It was really, really good learning experience. I feel as though if someone were to offer me that salary and that, those hours again, I would laugh in their face. But, you do anything when you just want the experience, you want to learn. And if you are new in radio, which I was, newish, new to broadcasting and that kind of thing, you want for your fuck-ups to be in a place where not as many... I would not die if my first radio breaks were broadcast on Sydney radio, because it's just too many people hear you being... I listen back to that now and I would die of how much I would cringe at myself. Anyway, 2020 came around.
Unfortunately for you, we found some of those breaks.
Stop it.
No, I'm kidding.
I actually would melt. I'd be please edit this out. I'm dying.
I love a bit of homework though.
And 2020 came around, whole COVID thing. There was 56 of us that lost our jobs on the one day. So that was when they axed all of the regionals. Yeah. And I found myself kind of coming back home and wondering, what am I going to do?
Home being?
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that took a little bit. That was a bit of a process too, because, Gladys at the time closed the border and
cheeky girl,
hotel quarantine and whatnot. Anyway, months and months passed and I was really struggling to kind of get my foot back in. And I caught up with one of my friends that I hadn't seen for a really long time. She's a model. Do you know Tegan Martin?
Yeah.
She was a Miss Universe for Australia.
She's close to Katie Williams.
Yeah.
So Katie's from my town.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good chicks.
Good chicks.
And Teags and I worked at a hair salon as our very first job when we were teenagers.
Cool.
For years and years together. I think the world of her. And I caught up with her and she kind of said this one thing to me at one point. She was like, I think the problem is that you're going after jobs, you're going and you're competing with so many different people for like jobs that already exist. I think what you should do is you should reach out and create a job of your own.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, yeah, nice for you to say. You're literally Miss Universe. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, things don't happen for me like that. And she gave me the tough love and she was like, no, I'm not going to hear this. And we ended up kind of talking about it. And she was like, well, if you want to work in podcasting, I think you should reach out to the podcast that you want to work for. And that's how I ended up sliding into Brit and Laura's DMs. And I was like, hello.
Oh my gosh.
I think, you know, I know that Laura's about to have her second baby. I know she edits the pod because I listen. I'm assuming she's not probably going to be able to do that. And like, there will be a lot of people who will be able to do this to a technical ability that will be a lot higher than mine. But I feel as though we could be a personality fit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the rest is kind of history. That
Slay.
was 4.5 years ago, I think.
Love that.
Yeah.
Key learning is if you want something, go get it.
Yeah, slide in. Like,
I
slide
literally
into the
had that
DMs.
conversation. My girlfriend Tilly is like about to do something and she pretty much created the concept and reached out to the person.
Good for her.
Yeah, go her. Shout
Yeah.
out to Tilly Whitfield. Can you explain, because this is very exciting, explain what Cloud is? So other than the fact it's a mini series off of Life Uncut, can you explain that? Like, what does it mean that it's a production of Life Uncut? Like,
So I think the closest thing that it might be easy to think about are like other women's media companies like Shameless or Mamma Mia.
Okay.
So they're kind of like the owners, you know, Life Uncut owns. And then this is the first of our kind of like branch off podcasts.
Cool.
And yeah, initially I think it was actually Matt, Laura's husband, who came to her. This would probably be about, it must be like last September maybe. And he initially was like, hey, what do you reckon about maybe Keish could create something about ADHD? And Laura kind of put it to me, and I was diagnosed about a year and a half before that and medicated. And at the time I was really like, and initially I was like, absolutely not. I don't want anything to do with that. You know, I don't want that thing to become my whole personality. There's so many people creating content about it at the moment, and I don't want to just be another one creating it for the sake of creating it. And there were a couple of things that happened. Primarily, you know, we kept on getting asked by people who listen to Life Uncut or in the Facebook group, like, you know, we really want this. And I wanted to take enough time in between me kind of working it out for myself and then jumping behind a mic to talk about it. Like, I wanted there to be quite a distance just so I could, I don't know if it was like making peace with it or if it was just me trying to feel more comfortable about being at a point of more resolution rather than in the depths of figuring that out for myself. But I did start to feel as though enough time had passed, and there was, in my, like, you know, when I was trying to kind of seek out content, I don't even think I needed to seek it out. I think as soon as you type ADHD into an algorithm, like, you will just be flooded with content about it.
Yeah.
And there's enough of a conversation about, you know, the trivialization of that kind of thing and how everyone now thinks that they have symptoms of ADHD because of the type of content that's created about it. And there's kind of two sides to that coin. But I really did realize that a lot of the content that existed, in my perspective, seemed to describe the symptoms of it. And it was like very relatable, you know, it was kind of, I'm sharing my experience and other people would go, oh, I so relate to that. And I found that myself too, you know, when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I very much relate to that person's experience of that thing. But then I was a bit like, okay, so like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what am I supposed to do with all of this massive amount of information? My boyfriend already knows about it. My mum already knows about it. My closest friends already know about it. You know, what's the point of figuring all this out if I'm not able to really do anything with it?
Yeah.
And I realized that I wanted to have a bit more of a conversation with people who had seemingly figured out the way that their brain was naturally wired and how they were able to make that work for them.
Yes.
You know, we hear all the time, like, there's all these problems with people with ADHD and stuff. And like, that's still true. They still exist. But I wanted to know how they took those things that could be a problem in one environment and put themselves in a different environment, and it became like a good thing. And not in the toxic positivity way. Because like, not everything needs to be productive. Not everything needs to be a good thing. Some things are just shit. And like, yeah, it's a burden you've got to live with. But for myself, I was like, I want to find a way to figure out how my brain naturally is, or the tendencies that I might have, so that I can try and like soften the edges where they need it and lean in where I'm able to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's surprising that you
Yeah.
had that mindset if you were wanting to get medicated as well. Because I feel like for me, I was like, I wanted to get medicated because I was like, then I don't have to go to therapy and figure out how to manage it. But then I was like, nah, you got to do both. So that's why I opted no, because I was like, I just need to like learn it first ish.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not an easy task. It's not an overnight task.
I think the thing that's kind of funny, there's two things about this that I've realized throughout making the pod. One is that up until the last episode, I'm the only person on the pod who is medicated, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, why did I seek out people who seemingly made a really different choice to me? I'm still curious about that, and I still don't know exactly why. But the other thing is that when I first was medicated, I think I was at a point of burnout where I probably, even if I were to go off of meds in the future, where I was, I felt as though the meds helped me kind of just lift myself out of that fog a little bit so that I could do the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at first it was like a real silver bullet. And I just remember being like, what the fuck? Like, this is how people naturally feel. This is insane. This is my life.
I'm scared of that. I'm not kidding.
I was like, it was such a relief.
Yeah.
But that initial like euphoria almost from that clarity for me only lasted about 2 to 3 months. And then it softened. And that was when I realized like, oh shit, like this is only 50% of the equation. I'm still gonna need to do.
Did you feel like a sense of like grieving at all because you were like, oh, this is how life could have been for the last however long? Because I feel like that would hit me so heavy, and that is a contributive factor as to why I opted to not get medicated.
Yeah. Hugely.
Yeah.
And I think I think that's probably the most common experience. And for me, a bit weirdly, I experienced a bit of anger, and I've had to think about that and try
towards
and unpack
your family or yourself?
Yeah. Towards the people like closest around me.
That's how I felt.
Because it was kind of one of those things that I know our understanding of ADHD has evolved so much, particularly in terms of like the inattentive side. And like back in the day, you know, when we were kids, that side wasn't really understood, especially in girls. And so I would have a lot of grace for that. But I have combined type, so I did have all the hyperactive symptoms as well. And there was a period of time where I was a bit like, guys, what the fuck? Like, how... I had every symptom on the list. All of my school reports, that my mum still had a couple, which ended up being very useful for my diagnosis, but they all said the exact same thing. And I was like, this is the symptom list. And so it did take me a little bit of time to kind of process that. And you know, the funny thing is I've spoken with mum about it because I felt a little bit bad. I spoke about that experience on Cloud. And when I was in the edit of it and I was listening back to it, I was like, oh, I feel as though I went a bit harsh on mum in this. Like, you know, no one understood that it affected girls in the same way, and blah, blah, blah.
It's your story though. Like, that's what I think is a little bit hard with parents. Like, you don't want to disrespect them, but at the end of the day, like, your story is your story.
Yeah. The thing that it was quite funny is that I called her and I was like, hey, look, I just kind of want to give you the heads up. I feel like when you hear that, I understand if you're a bit upset with me, and I'm sorry. Like, I didn't kind of realize how I'd worded it. She ended up listening and she called me back and she's like, do you know what? I just want to tell you. And I could tell that she felt quite bad about it. And she was like, I just thought it was normal because, like, I'm the same. And I was like, yeah, that checks out. Like, yeah, it's genetic. Of course, you're the one I got it from. Of course you thought that was normal because you experienced the exact same thing.
Literally.
So, yeah, that feeling of if people had have known, or if we had have figured this out earlier, what could things have been is still a bit of a question mark. And like, I think it's a thing that a lot of people do question, whether you've got ADHD or not. I think there's a lot of, you know, we're learning so much more about the way that, you know, our natural tendencies are, or what we might be inclined to do or be or whatever. And you can kind of apply that and try and apply it retrospectively. And then I'm almost like, what's the point? Like, I'm only going to feel negative about that. I do feel particularly negative about a few things that I've felt like a real failure in my life about for a long time, and certain ways that I was in like relationships and that kind of thing I've got massive regret about, you know. Like,
yeah, it's
you know, when people are like, I don't live with any regrets, I'm like, that must be so nice.
Yeah, no, I look back and like now knowing what, you know, my tendencies are, I look back and I'm like, that's terrible. I can't believe I ever did that. But now, like, I feel like I've been on a pretty good healing journey, right?
Yeah.
But even so, I've had this weird like epiphany that I'm like, wait, am I healed or have I just not been in a relationship for a while? So like I've recently cut off someone that I was like getting quite close to, but my concern was, okay, if I get too close to them, are my tendencies going to come back? Are they going to think I'm a weirdo? Like,
what kind of tendencies do you mean?
like in terms of like emotional dysregulation, or even like I have really bad like justice sensitivity. So like if I feel like something's not okay
not
or
right in the world.
yeah, whether it be with me or with like some person walking past in the street, like that can be a trigger point for me. And yeah, I haven't been, since really working through it, I haven't been with a partner properly to identify that. So I'm still in the like, I'm cautious phase. Like my thing was I was 22.
Yeah, right.
And I had been to the doctors, I think because I was pregnant. And I didn't want my son like having the same dynamic I had with my mum. And I knew it was because of ADHD, but she's not diagnosed. So, and like my doctor was like, I've met her. Yes. Like, you know, it's hereditary.
The writing's on the wall.
Yeah. And he wrote me up my referral for the psychiatrist. And the word he put on there was like, patient needs to be assessed for, I can't even pronounce the word, hypercholesterolemia. And I'm sitting in my car and I'm like crying because I was like, all those ex-boyfriends were right. I am fully off the radar. I've got anyway, I Googled it. It's high cholesterol. He got it wrong. Oh, I was rattled. Yeah, not
Psychiatrist is like, I don't do this.
Yeah, that's what I was
Go
like.
for a run, mate.
Yeah. Seriously. So, and
Stop
you know,
eating eggs.
Yeah, but you know, when, you know, one of my tendencies as well is like, I get like really bad brain blocks when I want to do something and it feels like it almost catches my breath, but I just can't do the task because it's, I don't know, I just can't do it. Like I just can't get to it. And I could have easily just run back up and been like, hey, this is wrong. I didn't go back for another 2 years.
Yeah.
I went back 2 years later and I was like, hey, my referral was like incorrect info. And they're like, wait, you never went? And I was like, no, you're literally trying to get me diagnosed with ADHD. And one of the things I'm really good at is putting off things. So it's actually huge that I've shown up 2 years later. Anyway, went down that path. And my reasoning for not wanting to get medicated is like, I think throughout COVID, I saw a lot of people getting diagnosed, a lot of people talking about it. And I said to my doctor, like, I don't want to be just a person diagnosed because of social media.
Yeah, 100%.
And my other thing was I was really concerned because I knew, I've always known I had it. I just needed a professional to be like, this is what you have, this is how we're going to treat it, da-da-da. I was worried about getting dependent on the medication.
Yeah.
In a time where it was very common for people to be getting Ritalin and Dexies because of the demand of people getting diagnosed. Like in my area, I know that there was a 3-month wait for medication. And I didn't want to see what life was like if I could have had somewhat of a, you know, neurotypical brain and then have that taken away from me like straight away. So I was like, you know, I was becoming a new mom. I was like, I just want to like, oh no, if I was 22, I wasn't pregnant then. It must have been the reason why I went back was because I was pregnant. And I thought, I need to get my shit together.
Also, from like what I've heard, and again, not a doctor, but I've heard that like hormonal changes can exacerbate symptoms massively.
Yeah,
so it's
I found
likely that
that
you're feeling
actually
it.
after I gave birth.
Yeah.
My like emotional dysregulation was like really intense, and it was really hard because, you know, 6 months postpartum, I was a single mum. So my emotions, like I didn't have that partner support to like, you know, be like, it's cool, just remember, like it's not as bad as it seems. And then plus the hormones on top of it. So I think it was obviously like pretty good timing for me to, you know, get on top of it. But I thought, you know, I'm breastfeeding, I'm not going to medicate. But now I'm like, I think having so much on my plate, being a bit more tired also increases the tendencies as well. So I'm like, should I just bloody do it?
Well, I think it's like, it's kind of a question about anything. It's like, it's not a problem unless it's a problem for you. You know, like for me, the weight of the mental burnout, and I feel a little bit as though saying that to a neurotypical person, and I'm also careful about, you know, using labels and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it means the same thing, because my burnout felt as though I literally was dragging a tire behind me, and there would just be some days where I thought I had really crippling depression.
Yeah.
And it could last for like up to 3 weeks.
Could you not get out of bed?
Like
it's like
I could, because I had shit that I had to do.
Yeah.
You know, like for you as a mum, you've got to get out of bed for your kid. I had to go to work. But if I was on a day where I didn't have to, and I hadn't made plans where other people were expecting things from me, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and it was more about, you know, the motivation to want to do things that brought me joy completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And that was why I was kind of like, oh, this is actually getting a bit, it's actually getting a bit dangerous to this point where I just feel as though I'm not experiencing joy anymore. And like, it was a really sad way to be. So when I say that, if you're in a position where you're kind of like, nah, I'm going to try these other therapies, and like other therapies are really, really, really effective for a lot of people, and they can have a lot of success in that way. I think I was like open to the easy option, you know, because I just wanted that relief initially. And there's a woman named Jenna Free who is a therapist. She's Canadian, and she works on regulation. Like dysregulation is kind of her shtick, her jam.
Yeah.
I'll send you her details actually.
Please do.
Yeah, well, I've got an episode coming up with her, and she is she's not medicated, so she does everything kind of more in the like psychotherapy space. And something that she said that really stood out to me was, you can't give someone who is burnt out from ADHD more homework to do. You know, you can't add to the plate and expect that to make them better, because you're just giving them more shit to do. They're already fatigued from what they're doing. And so we need to work on removing things first and then implementing strategies. And that really stuck with me. I was like, that is actually so true. So I kind of feel as though I took a bit of a fast track, little helping aid to, you know, the changes that you're to make. And I understand why people don't want to be medicated. A part of me is, I am trying to be careful about not becoming reliant. I almost
take it every day though, right? You need to.
No, I don't take it every day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But again, it's because I don't want to be reliant. Like I kind of don't want to feel as though this thing has more control over me than what I have.
So when do you decide you want to take it?
So I will take it if I have like big work days.
Yeah.
And or like things like big social events, you know, like weddings, that kind of thing. If I have a day where I don't need to get as much work done, or if like the cognitive load of that work is easier, you know, if it's just like simple tasks and little ones rather than like full in-depth edits and all that kind of stuff, I will either half dose it or go raw.
Yeah. Even
Raw
when
dog
you,
it.
even when you raw dog it, like I see for me with work, I can really lock in. Like I can hyperfixate really easy. Like when back in my ecom days, like I could smash a whole website in a day and have it sold by the next day, because I just would sit there, and it's probably very unhealthy. I would sit there for like 12 to 16 hours just smashing the laptop, and boom, come out on the other side. And I was like, cool, I'm going to lay in bed for the next 2 days because I'm so tired.
Well, this is what I mean by, some people would look at that and be like, yeah, that can't be healthy for you, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, well, if that works for you, if that's how you're making money, like, cool, play on. Like, figure out what works for you and lean in. You know, that was the one thing that I actually learnt through doing Cloud. I didn't realize how much I needed to kind of give myself the permission. Mark Manson was one of the ones who
Which
really...
is also so cool. If people don't know who that is, he's the guy that wrote The Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is so cool.
20 million copies.
Like
He's
crazy.
amazing. Hey, I was really, really touched to be able to chat with him. He was diagnosed when he was 14. He went on medication at the time.
Yeah.
And he really did not have a good experience with it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was, you know, the time that he was in and the meds weren't right, if it was a dosage issue, or if he just isn't suited to meds. And so he was the one who I really spoke to. I listened to so much of his content. I really, really enjoy him. And I had heard him mention ADHD like less than 4 times in hours, like hundreds of hours of content. And I was like, that's really interesting. I feel as though Mark doesn't like the fact that he has ADHD. I think that he thinks it's a real deficit. Like, I think he's almost embarrassed of it, which I think is how a lot of us can feel. And it's initially how I felt before I spoke about it publicly. I was like, I don't really want people... I would only ever speak about it if it was in a self-deprecating way. And I'd be like, yeah, well, you know, it must be the ADHD.
Yeah, that's literally what I do.
Yeah, yeah, which is like that's also still fine. I still want to be that way. I don't want to be the person who's super serious about something and can't take a joke and can't take the piss about it. But yeah, Mark was the one who was really like, you can listen to all of the experts in the world who will tell you the best way to do things and the way that you're going to feel happiest, you're going to feel peace, you're going to feel this and that. Productivity being massively in that space. And he's like, but if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't fucking work for you. So stop listening. Stop trying to like fit a square peg into a round hole. Yeah. So if you can create a website in 12 hours and you can have it solved by the next day. I would not do that anymore. I mean, I don't recommend doing it day after day after day.
But like, why am I not eating and doing that? I mean, I used to do that even when I was younger with The Sims. Yeah. Like, I thought I just had a problem.
Yeah, I think The Sims had a stranglehold on our generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did have a problem though.
Still do.
Yeah.
Mind your business over there, Dal. Wow, a lot of these questions I was going to ask you were kind of like banging on. But did you know though, one thing I was going to say was I low-key knew that you had ADHD when you forgot about Brit's plant. I was like, ADHD cool. That's fine.
Do you know what is so funny? I didn't take meds for 3 weeks over Christmas.
Oh, and that's when it was.
Like, I knew I was supposed to look after the plant. It's not that I forgot about the fact that I told her I'd do it.
Yeah.
But I think I told her that I forgot that I told her. I just didn't have a good concept of how many days had passed.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's a plant. It needs to be watered like once a week. It will be fine. It can go 2 weeks. It's not the Sahara Desert. She lives on the ground floor and it's not in direct sunlight. It'll be fine. Yeah.
No, that shit shriveled up.
Yeah, no, that shit died. I hate that plant so much.
I saw that and now it's like, oh, we have similar brain.
Yeah, but kind of interestingly, what you were saying before about like medication and personality and stuff, something that was really weird for me that I experienced over that 3 weeks that I didn't take meds is that I kind of noticed some tendencies that I used to think were personality quirks. They really started to come back into my life. And
like
I
have
have
energy bursts at all?
No, almost the opposite. Like being super forgetful about where I'd put things in the house, or just like a bit scatty and fully in a daze and a bit in la la land at times. And then other times I would, you know, there were quite a few times where my boyfriend would we lived together, and he would just find things like the fly spray in the shower, or like, do you know, like
that.
And I'm like, oh, that's because I saw that, and then I realized that I needed to get the scrubber, and then, you know, I went and did 10 other things and I just forgot to put it back. Like, get over it.
Yeah.
We got into so many arguments over that 3 week period, and I was kind of reflecting back on it when I started doing work for Cloud again, and I really hated the way that I felt, because I was like, okay, hang on a second. If I am more palatable to everybody when I'm medicated, like, what does that mean about who I actually am? What does that mean about, like, whether I'm surrounded by the right people, or, like, do I need to change how I actually am? Because if who I am naturally, you know, like unmedicated, is not a good person to be around, and everyone seems to get really frustrated.
Don't say that. That's going to make me cry, but that's how I feel.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's I just looked at you and I saw your tears. That was a really, really strange thing to kind of try and sit back and and think about.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's not a nice feeling.
No.
And I need to try and find a way that I'm not as reliant on meds. But also it caused a really very serious and full-on conversation with my boyfriend and I. And I think it was me actually saying to him, if I feel as though you don't like me as my natural self, and we got together before I was diagnosed, so he does know that side of me as well. I was kind of like, what is that? How do you think that's going to make me feel in our relationship? Like, if I don't feel as though I can actually turn up as myself, and you're not going to like me as my real self, that makes me feel like this big.
Yeah.
And he responded really well to it, which I'm thankful for.
For life,
I think it was kind of that realization for him where he was like, oh, this is one of those things that she's not joking about. You know, she's not joking about one of these silly little quirks. This is something that she actually feels a fair bit of shame around, and like she doesn't like that about herself. So I need to not exacerbate that.
Yeah.
I feel like that took a really serious turn. Sorry, this podcast is
No.
usually very funny and very
No,
light. Like,
we're fine. I mean,
But-
for all I know, people
Yeah.
could be laughing at us right now. You just don't know.
they might be thinking that we're two girls that are just taking themselves too seriously. This is much more me. But yeah, when you were saying kind of I'm a bit worried about dating and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
I very much relate to that. Where you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know whether I want to soften these certain sides of me because I know that most people don't really like that about me. So do I kind of try and soften that at the beginning and let them start to like me, and then maybe introduce them to the more like real
It's
version
kinda like
of myself?
Hannah Montana, hey, like you got the best of both worlds. A bit cray-cray and
Yeah.
then a bit chill girl.
You'll never be bored.
Well, that was actually my next question. So I saw a clip from Bradley's podcast, A Lot to Talk About. You were recently on his show. The clip was actually about your relationship and how your emotional dysregulation, I think it was, you guys were talking about. Did you have struggles in your relationship prior to your diagnosis for you? Like, was that contributing factor for you to go and get your diagnosis?
Not the current relationship.
Okay.
I realized that it was funny in the diagnosis process. They ask you about like impulsivity, and they particularly, you would know, ask you about things like drug use and like gambling, like if you are really impulsive with your spending and that kind of thing. And I was like, no, I don't really relate to that.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
loves a slap.
Love that for you. Wish I didn't tick that damn box. But anyway, that must be nice.
Yeah, what a weird privilege to be like, yeah, no, I don't struggle in that way. But it was kind of when we scratched the surface a bit more, and we started asking questions about dating and impulsivity, and I had this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my
man
days.
choice.
I did not realize that for the majority of my 20s, that makes so much more sense. Like, I was just chasing a dopamine high.
Yeah.
I was in the cat mouse, push pull, chase, be chased. And I realized that, and this is something a lot of people with ADHD kind of experience. We experience emotion to like an insane level. You know, like the wavelength is to the max and to the minimum.
I think a lot of people that are love bombers, and like, I know they're meant to be, you know, narcissists, but like NPD. Yeah.
Narcissistic personality disorder, yeah.
But also a lot of people with ADHD tend to be love bombers as well.
Yeah, I think the important
Takes one to know
distinction
one,
there
Skye.
Me and my love bombing, you know me.
is like the intention behind it is different. I think people with ADHD, they love the high and they love the intensity, because if you lack dopamine naturally, which is the current theory of what we do, and you chase that out, you can, I guess, love bomb by accident because you just want to feel that really high. Whereas I think if it's more in the narcissistic space, it's to manipulate someone.
Yeah.
It's to kind of like manipulate them into being a certain way for you, or you having control over them.
Yeah.
So I don't want people like with ADHD to hear that and be like, wait a second, am I fucked? Like, are you saying that I'm also
two
love bomber?
No, two different diagnoses, like two different completely like brain chemicals.
Yeah. The emotional regulation thing, I kind of realized was really related to past relationships, and I got into some really fucked ones. Like,
Yeah. Same, sis.
Haven't we all though?
oh my days.
I literally dated a truck driver.
Truck
Oi,
drivers
what's
are
wrong with the
great.
truckies? Yeah.
I loved him. I loved him for 3 months.
3 months and then you got over it?
Yeah, I was like, wait, my friend's all right. I don't really like him. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was like 20, so whatever. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
But-
you live and learn.
Get good dopamine hit.
Good dopamine hit. And
Yeah.
I think it was kind of coincided at a similar time to, like, it was a couple months before I ended up actually seeking out a diagnosis. And I've realized that these things were actually way more intertwined than what I thought they were at the time. I just felt as though, like, throughout every single dating experience, and I do say this a bit, I'm like, not everyone has to date bad people to appreciate good, but
Yeah.
I had to date bad people to appreciate good.
Yeah.
Because whether they were, like, all these different people, really similar outcomes, really similar emotional response from me, which I now can realize was a heightened response, and I'm not proud of that. Like, I feel quite embarrassed about a lot of the ways I
reacted. It can feel a little bit shameful and embarrassing.
Yeah,
I get that.
definitely. And so I ended up taking like a 3-month very deliberate break from dating, and I was living in Bondi at the time, and I was like, I can't
Dating
keep doing
Central
this.
in Bondi.
It's full on.
Girls got to get a free dinner Tuesday through Wednesday. I mean, through Thursday, sorry.
Maybe
3
that's my
nights a week.
problem. I was like always like, no, I'll get this one. It was costing me money.
That is expensive. And don't
yeah.
ever do that.
Yeah.
The mans can pay first dates.
I don't mind.
On a first date,
Yeah, true.
that's scary.
It's chivalrous.
What's that podcast? I'm a feminist, but they can shout me dinner.
Well, okay, so this one time I went on a date with a guy who I had met out, and he was so lovely and he was beautiful. I don't want to say any more identifying features. But we went for a date, and we went to this Japanese place that I loved. And I really liked going there because it was super cheap. So I was like, this isn't a big expectation, you know. No one's going to be
Investment.
put off. Yeah, like no one's going to be super put off by being like, oh, she wants me to take her to like a hatted restaurant, you know. Again, fearful of being too much for people. I was like, I don't want to scare you off by being too much. And I had $12 worth of sushi because it was like sushi train stuff, right? And it got to the end, the whole bill was like $40. And he looked at me and he's like, do you want to split it?
But, ooh.
And I was like, do you know what? I'll just pay. I'd actually not. I don't want to split it. That makes me. I couldn't go on a date with him again, and he was so confused by it because, you know, other than that, but there was massive ick.
That's
$12,
an
bro.
ick.
What?
$12?
Come on.
Mate, that could have been the cheapest route of your life. No, I'm kidding. Not saying that about you. It's just a me thing.
She didn't say that she didn't.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Anyway, realized that, you know, the emotion that was involved in dating was just a bit too much for me at the time. Took a huge break, very deliberately got back into the dating world with the intention of dating differently. And I was like, I need to try and go for people who are different. And that is exactly what I found. My relationship now is not like any relationship I've had before. And I feel like when people speak like that, they usually mean it in a super romantic way. I don't mean it in a romantic way. Like, it is the most secure. It is the least thrilling relationship I've ever had. And I had never experienced that before because I wouldn't have been attracted to them before. Because I would have been like, oh, this is boring. You know, he calls me every day. He texts me every day. It's super predictable.
Yeah.
I'm not like worried about, you know, whether he's seeing other girls. It was the only time I've literally ever experienced that in my life. And I think that relationship came into my life at the same time that I realized, oh, my emotions are all over the shop. And it was a part of the kind of like calming down of my emotions. Yeah.
My girlfriend's actually a psychologist, and she said to me after my ex-partner definitely is not diagnosed, but he 100% has ADHD. We were like the same brain at one point, you know. And I just think when you are neurodivergent, you can pick one from a crowd. And she said to me, your next relationship with the right person will feel really boring to you. You're not going to get the dopamine hits. You're not going to get that up and down thrill. It's going to feel really boring to you. And that's probably going to be the signal that you're with the right person.
Yeah. How do you think you'll feel though? Like, if you
I
think
don't
about
know.
turning up in that, do you think that, are you worried? Because I was really worried and I had to really actively work on it of being like, am I bored, or is this not the right relationship?
Yeah. So I think that's what I've been through recently. I was trying to implement the whole, like, am I dating this person because they treat me right and this and that? But it ended up being like, I was like getting excited, waiting for him to text me back. And then when I sat down, like, this was not that long ago, I was like, hang on, if I look in retrospect, he's not treating me the way I would expect to be treated, or how I, you know, hold myself up. Even in like a platonic way, I don't expect that kind of standard. So I had to be like, listen, you know, this is just not really right for me, and it's like nothing to do with you. It's just like, we're just having an imbalance.
It's not you, but it is you. Like,
it's actually
like,
you, and fucking gross.
Feel like
balls.
you don't respect me. Gross.
Learn how to treat a lady. Anyway, but yeah, it's like made me reflect, because then at first, like, when I, you know, said I wasn't interested anymore, I spent like the first week being like, fuck, like, I'm really sad. I want to message him. Not really sad, but I was like, kind of like, get that itch, like, for that dopamine hit again. It's like, oh, if I text him, will he text me back? And how long is he going to take? Is he going to take 2 minutes, or is he going to make me wait for 6 hours?
Yeah.
So, yeah, yet to date the neutral feeling.
It's also like the neutral feeling can feel super strange. And I think that when people kind of talk like this, and I used to think this when they would talk like this, I would be like, yeah, but I'm not just going to fucking swipe on anybody. Like, you know, I also want to be attracted to my partner. I want to fuck my boyfriend. Do you know what I mean? Like, it can be a fine line, and it can be like a hard line to actually determine where it is between what feels attractive and what is still good for me.
I literally got this lecture from my friends last year. They were like, you need to go on dates with people that you don't know. Because my thing was like, I'd kind of go on a date with someone I knew they wouldn't be like good for me, and like knew I'd probably have that, you know, but I just still can't do it. I don't want to go on a date with a rando yet. I don't know.
Maybe yet's the key word there.
Yet.
Yeah.
Soon.
If I know anyone good, I'll let you know.
Oh my God,
I don't know many people left over.
Let a sister know. I know, like, what is going on?
Maybe someone that's like into cheap sushi.
Hey, yeah, I
like
can see what he's up
sushi.
to. Look, he was a lovely guy other than the $12 sushi.
I don't like sharing men though. Like, if I know you've even hung out with that person.
No, it won't be sharing.
not
It'll be
having-
sloppy seconds.
Thanks, Jock. Well,
Don't worry, you look like the better woman.
no. I don't want to do that. I need someone that's unscathed.
I've been
know?
telling her she needs to go on Farmer.
Says this every
Would you want a
episode.
farmer boy?
Probably.
You reckon?
I don't know. I just am like, can I commit to a farm like 8 hours away? Like,
What? Very different lifestyle.
you know, I would go wineries. That's like 2 hours. That's
I
still
could go
technically-
somewhere that I could just
She
be
just
drunk
wants
the whole
some
time. That'd be
little
way
rosé
better.
babies.
Yeah, I don't mind that. You can
Just
have
be
a
buzzed
winery.
the whole time. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I think that I would be well suited to that, because then you can still have a couple of like mini ponies and like a Highland cow if you wanted,
Yeah.
and then you could have at least 5 dogs. Everyone fits. I want to quickly ask you what your rogue moment is that you'd like to share.
Okay, so I was having a bit of a think about this because I knew that you did it on the podcast, and I was like, oh, I could share that, or I could share that, or I could share that one. And then I was like, oh my days, like at what point do I just acknowledge that I was a fucking hot mess?
I still am. So like, I'm in my no judgment era.
So I thought about this story and I was like, this one's kind of fun and, you know, not...
That's right. We listen, we don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge. I feel like you might enjoy this one. That's
Yeah,
why I thought
I'm
it could be a
ready.
good one. So firstly, this was prior to me. This is when I don't drink anymore. This was definitely when I was very loosey-goosey with the drink. So there was this one time that I was flying to Africa and I got on the plane in Sydney and there was a guy on the window seat and I had booked the aisle. And I kind of looked at him and he had headphones in and he was covered in tattoos. He was this big guy and like...
Smash.
Maybe your type.
Smash.
And I looked at him and there was like a seat in the middle and I just made a comment, something like, oh, I really hope no one sits there because then, you know, then we get a bit more room.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me and he was like, didn't want a bar of it, right? Anyway, put seatbelts on, they do the safety demonstration. We're up in the air. They start bringing around some of the food and the drink. We both get those things. And at the time, I don't know if you can get like retrospectively in trouble for this, but I had some incredibly strong sleeping pills that weren't mine. I shouldn't have been taking them. They were like...
Yes, you should. You're traveling. You're a travel queen. We don't have time for jet lag. The only way you can boycott is sleeping pills.
Sure. However you do you. Anyone do you. And at one point I kind of got a little bit nervous. Like, I'm only 5'2", so like I'm a pretty small person, and I was like, what happens if something like kind of cooked happens while I'm on these sleeping pills? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I've not taken them before, I don't really know what to expect. And I kind of turned to him and I was like, hey, sorry if this is a bit weird, but like, I'm about to take a sleeping pill that I've never taken before, and they're really strong. Like, do you mind just kind of like keeping a check on me kind of, in a few hours or whatever? And he looked at me and he went, I can't tell if you're serious or not. And I was like, I'm completely serious. And he laughed. And I was like, are you British? Anyway, we started chatting. And typical me, I was asking all of the questions. And I was like, why were you in Australia? Blah, 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 blah.
Do you like sushi?
Would you pay for my $12 sushi? No, this is long before this. This is like 10 years ago. And we kept chatting. And we were eating our little like plain meals, and we ended up putting the table in the middle down and putting our food on that.
Picnic.
And we started having like dinner together. And we're chatting back and forth, and they come around. On international flights how you can have as much alcohol for free as you want. We started having some drinks, and I turned to him and I was like, hey, those sleeping pills I mentioned? Like, I've got a few. Do you want one? And he's like, sure, why not? Like, for sure. So the next thing I know, we are like, the only way that I could describe us would be that we were like the human version of ramen noodles. Like, I could not hold my posture up because we were in the air. We'd been drinking, I think I must have been like 4 drinks deep by this point, plus these sleeping pills. The two of us ended up like almost half kind of leaning on each other, spooning almost to a dribble point of cuddling asleep on a plane.
No, this is hot.
Because
Smash.
we were so out of it. And I ended up making out with this guy on the plane.
No, I'm dead. I love this. This is my fantasy.
I'm thinking about it. And I just imagine now, like, that would have been actually the sloppiest, most, like, rogue make out.
Imagine the people watching from across the aisle.
Really, they just would have been like, who is this girl?
Fucking
She's drugged
messy.
this guy up.
You drugged him.
Like, what has happened here? Anyway, we ended up both getting off the plane in Abu Dhabi, and he was continuing on to London, and I was obviously going to Africa. And I just remember the two of us being like, that was one of the better first dates I've ever been on. We're still buzzed as anything at this point. I don't know how long that flight is, whether it's the 14-hour one or the 7-hour one. But still to this day, I'm like, what is wrong with me?
That's our best rogue story ever.
Like,
yeah,
that
that's
is
up there.
the best one.
I hold that so nicely in my heart. I used to do shit like that all the time.
That's living, Barry.
Is it? Or is
Yeah.
it just like, is that just too
You're
chaotic?
not going to do
That's
that
what
when
they
you're
make
in your
movies
60s.
out of.
Seriously, that is some smash shit.
Only
That
if
is
it goes well. And like, lucky for me, he was a great guy. I still have him on Instagram. He's now married. Like, good for you, babe.
love that for him.
Yeah, he's living his
But it's
best
giving
life.
like wedding singer meets like
Yeah, all we need
Cinderella
is for
story.
him to like come running down the jet bridge to your next flight, being like, no, don't go.
But it could have been terrible. And that's the thing that I think, that's the thing I realized, is that I used to just do stuff like that where I am so lucky. It always worked out well. But fuck me, it could have not. Like.
To be fair, now I'm like kind of reflecting and I'm like, I relate. But when I went and saw a psychic, she told me that I have like the strongest kind of spirit protecting. His name is Michael.
Oh, you've got something looking over you?
Yep, and it makes sense because I used to do that shit all the time. I've been in many. Archangel Michael.
Oh.
Main card. Main protector. Makes sense.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you,
may,
Michael.
May Michael bless you with
Yeah, I
a
reckon
plain makeout.
you've got Michael. You definitely have a Michael. You could have been Mal Hying.
I don't feel as though the ramen noodles would have done that well.
Yeah.
The human ramen
Actually, I'm
noodles
thinking
were
about that
definitely
now.
not.
You
no.
both, you just,
Whiskey
I,
dip.
I want to make sure that you're not picturing it as like some cute romantic thing. We were, what's that movie? There's a movie where they,
Angus?
no,
Because that's yucky.
what's the movie where they think that Leonardo DiCaprio, he's in,
Oh, Inception.
no, the one where he's super rich, Wolf of Wall Street. Is that it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Where
and when-
he thinks
yeah.
he's like driving
Killing
really
it.
well, but he gets home and he's actually an absolute mess. That's the version that we were. Like, I think you're picturing the version of us being like all cute and having this little dinner date. We were just like sloppy messes. When Leo's on like lemons or something in that
Yeah.
movie, that's closer to what we looked like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very rogue.
Well, on
Still
that
fun.
note,
Suited to the pod.
right, quick game. 2 minutes.
Sorry, I ramble.
No, you're so fine.
If you hadn't noticed.
it's so fun.
We edit the pods that I'm We cut them down.
So one of my tendencies, like all the listeners know, like I always lose my train of thought, like always. And
Scatterbrain.
yeah.
Can I tell you though, because I've listened to your pod, I think you have such a beautiful natural curiosity for things,
Aw.
and I don't think enough people have pointed it out.
Oh,
like,
thank you.
I can tell that your brain goes in directions that people wouldn't expect, which firstly makes it a more interesting interview because it's not like chronological and it's not what you
No.
expect. And as someone who works in that space, I can tell when an interview is like prepped chronologically and like we're following a bunch of questions, blah, blah, blah. Your questions come from a genuine curiosity, and that's actually such a beautiful trait that you have.
Oh, thank you. That is
Yeah.
so nice. That's the nicest thing someone said to me all month, and we're like 6 days in. I've seen a lot of people. I've seen so many people. That's so nice. Thank you.
Don't get your,
It's
your head
true.
too big. Jeez.
Yeah.
No, my head is like,
Again, this is kind of related to what I am actually genuinely trying to do more of in my own life at the moment. And it's
Compliments?
fine. No, it's
oh. I'm scared.
no. It's finding like the natural ways that you are, but seeing it as a good thing.
Yeah.
Because some people will say that you're scattered.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you're curious. You're curious about
Never
different
let them know your
aspects.
next move, doll.
Keep them on their toes.
Not that I'm doing it on purpose, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I do sometimes get a little self-conscious of that when people come in, especially like a bigger personality. Like when you came in, right? I was like, oh, you know, is this unprofessional? Like, because I feel like, one, I'm not going off like a sketch.
Yeah.
But when someone's talking, I'm like, I'm trying to stick to it, but I also like, I'm interested. Everyone that comes in here, I'm interested in, and I want to know more. I wish Ben Lee was back here because I feel like I didn't get to talk about the cults enough. And at the time I was just so stumped. I think about it a lot. I'm like, come back so we can talk about cults. But
I
he
get
just-
the vibe that everyone was a bit thrown by the whole cult.
Did you know Ben
Do-
Lee was in cults?
Do you want to know how I know something about this? This is so rogue.
From his wedding?
No, his cousin was one of my old co-hosts.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you guys had the time to unpack.
Well,
I
don't know,
sat
feel
here and I was
Ben,
like,
Ben's
"Ooh."
definitely not a strange. I mean, this is also years and years ago. Definitely not as strange, but I got the impression that they weren't close. So I think that when he kind of went a little bit left, I don't know whether he maintained that like.
Babes, he was in the jungle.
Yeah.
That's
I think
like-
when people are going down cults, they're often not grounded by their family.
Yeah. So, and I also was sitting there like, what is rude to ask and what's not? I've never touched on this subject before. I need to, you know, do some learnings before anyway, so I was just letting him pass that comment up. But thank you. That's nice compliments. That is nice. Well, anyway, the game is called Finish the Thought.
Oh, love this.
So I'm going to say the sentence and you have like 3 seconds to spit out what you can.
Okay.
First thing that comes to mind.
I knew I had ADHD when...
Everyone told me. Everyone told me that I did. Yeah, I mean, and I saw everything online that every single person ever relates to. Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah.
The most random thing I've ever hyperfixated on is...
This thought.
Oh, my days. I don't know, because like they don't seem that random to me.
Mine
yeah,
is, like-
actually, no, I'm thinking about one. One time I really was interested in like the makeup of coins and why they're different colors and why they would choose to make something that is of such small value that I was like, surely it costs more than 10 cents to make that. So, and I kind of got into a bit of a rabbit hole of like, if we're creating a
Spoiler
currency,
alert, it
but
does.
it's costing more.
Wait, it does?
Yeah.
Yeah, but how does that
Why do you
work
always
in
gotta ruin a good
economies
thing?
then? Because if you're making a currency and it costs you more than it does to actually make it, like how does that circle
Because
back?
that same 10 cents goes through the economy multiple times.
Oh, we've got someone who's like, he's better at this
Nerdy.
than us.
Nerdy.
He's not.
Not nerdy, just like
He's neurotypical.
economy. Yeah, like finance is not my vibe.
I can't do maths. Yeah.
Do you ever get like, so my thing is like hyperfixation on foods as well. Like I'll
Yeah.
have the same breakfast
I've
for
got
like
the
a
egg
couple
ick
months.
right now.
Yeah, same, big yuckies. I'm on the toasties. I
Mm.
forgot I had a toasty machine, so I've had them for like a month straight. Not really mixing it up, just cheese.
Do you know what's really
Put canned
interesting?
spaghetti and cheese on.
Big nummies, that sounds lovely.
delish.
Yeah.
That does sound really
Or
good.
cream corn and cheese.
You know
yeah.
what's weird for me with the hyperfixation on food is I don't know what it is that makes me one day be so into it and then the next not. I'm like, what is the thing? What changed?
Do you know
Did
what
I smell
went from?
something? Did I like?
granola and yogurt, and then I was like, toasties. Literally, that's how it happened.
You know, when people are like, yeah, because you love that. And I'm like, I hate that. What
Yeah,
are
I
you
don't
talking about? They're
know.
like, 2 months ago, that was the only thing you would ever order. You know,
I did. I've got to chuck them, but I've had a carton of eggs in my fridge for ages because before the granola and yogurt, it was scrambled eggs.
Right.
But
egg ick.
stinky.
Yeah.
Do you guys like listen to a new favourite song until you just on repeat until you're like, I fucking hate this song?
Obviously, I do that all the time.
I don't think I get to the point where I hate it.
I just fixate on a new one.
Yeah.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I've been really chaperoning, and this morning I was like, my poor child does not need to listen to Pink Pony Club anymore. I'm going to listen to The Greatest Showman.
It could be worse.
And I just went straight back over to Pink Pony Club.
It could be a lot worse. Jock, what's your most recent hyperfixation song?
Do you even listen to music?
yeah, I listen to music all the time.
He listens
He
to
listens to
podcasts about
country, though.
coins and how it gets passed back to the economy.
Sad thing is, sometimes I do. Actually, no, because it was on Hamish and Andy.
Oh.
Because, they're trying to make their H&A coin.
Yes.
Ah.
Yes.
Shout out to Hamish. I met him the other day at Jamboree.
I've met them both a couple times and they're really, really lovely people.
He
They're the
said-
type of people that I want to hate because they're so successful and so good at what they do. And I'm like, oh,
Divine
how?
timing, though.
Like, how? But they're just such nice, genuine people that I'm like, I can't hate you.
No,
'cause
you can't.
that would make me a dick.
Fragile little people. You want to save them forever. But it was like divine timing, right? I was listening to Zoe's audio book,
Yeah.
The Love. I didn't want to read it because I was already reading too many things. So been listening to it and went to Jamboree. Hamish was there and I was like, oh my golly gosh, you need to come on the show. And he goes, yeah, DM me. And then this morning I went on his Instagram. Motherfucker has like 1.2 million followers.
Yeah.
I'm not DMing you. I said to him,
Hey, look, where did this show start with sliding into DMs?
yeah, I know.
That's how we get heaps of guests on Life Uncut.
But like I have 1,000 followers on A Bit Rogue.
That's okay.
He's not going to see my DM. I'm going to email
Do you
him.
know what, actually? Mark Manson, long story again, and this will sound like the biggest, like, personal wank fest. But he's got millions of followers across all platforms and whatnot. I'm friends with his co-host and producer and content researcher. And I had a conversation after interviewing him because I know it's because of them that Mark was like, yeah, sure, I'll throw you a bone if she's your friend. And he said something along the lines of like, no, I actually really enjoyed having a different chat. Like, I go on these podcasts with the same people who have massive followings and that kind of thing. And it was really nice to have a different type of conversation with someone.
Yeah.
So lean into that.
Yeah. I mean, I do get a few comments like that from
Yeah.
guests, especially Olympians. They're like, and other athletes, they enjoy having a conversation that's not your typical like interview.
Yeah.
Because it's a conversation. We're just hanging out. I'm just getting to know you. thank you so much for coming on the show.
for having me.
I am going to pop Cloud in the show notes, the link to the show, if you guys want to listen. And thank you so much for coming in the studio.
Thanks for having me. Sorry if I rambled.
Thanks for listening to A Bit Rogue, where we uncover the stories of athletes, artists, and celebrities with their most rogue moments. Episodes dropping every Wednesday.